Iowa football has a new color analyst for their football radio broadcast. It is former linebacker Pat Angerer. We talk about him, and Scott Dochterman stops by to talk everything going on in the world of Hawkeye athletics. All today, Locked On Hawkeyes.
You are Locked On Hawkeyes, your daily podcast on the Iowa Hawkeyes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I'm Trent Condon, and this is the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. Thanks for making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. We're available wherever you find podcasts, and you can also find us on YouTube. While you're there, make sure you hit the subscribe button. Helps us get in front of more Hawkeye fans. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. That's why LinkedIn Jobs helps find the right people for your team faster and for free. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions apply. Well, you can find me on Twitter at Trent Condon. We'll love a follow over there. You can also follow the show account at Locked On Iowa. And we have some breaking news from today, as it was announced officially that Pat Angerer will be the new radio analyst for the Hawkeye radio broadcast. Now, this is something, obviously, it is a different conversation that was in the past when not every game was televised, but I know there's many people out there that the radio broadcast is a lot of times their connection. You think of the times that the games are streaming on a platform like Peacock, and radio is still important, not only in what they do and bringing the broadcast to the people that just can't happen to be in a television for whatever reason, but also because of the ambassador that they are for the university and what they do. And as we saw with Ed Podolak later in his career, wasn't out there a whole lot. I think this is an absolute home run. And the finalists that were out there, Mitch King, former defensive lineman for the Hawkeyes in the early 2000s, James Vandenberg, the quarterback, a couple of guys that probably would have made sense. Nate Kading, another one. Obviously, all these guys, Ferentz connections, people that are close to the community. That's something that you heard with all four of these finalists. But for me, of that group of four, Pat Angerer was the guy that I was most excited about. Not only because I'd heard Pat a little bit more. I don't think I've ever heard Mitch King do an interview after his playing career was over. Same with James Vandenberg. Seen a little bit with Nate Kading, but not nearly as much as I've seen from Pat Angerer. Pat Angerer is wired a little differently, and he is a guy that a little loose, and that's okay. You know, in today's environment, having somebody up there that has first the football acumen. I mean, that's where you have to start. Being able to describe the X's and O's. And though he doesn't have a background in radio or even broadcasting games, he definitely has the football acumen. I mean, you looked at that guy, you go back to his days in Bettendorf and what he did in that state championship game, basically playing one-armed and just dominating a football game and leading Bettendorf to a national champion, to a high school state championship, 2 decades ago now. Dude was an absolute monster on the football field. And then to get to Iowa City, very quickly realized what it was going to take to play at this level and then to be able to do it and become a beloved fan favorite. But they're called a color analyst. And yes, you're providing color to the game. He's a colorful guy. And to have a different type, right? Podolak was that. And as he started to get up there, maybe not quite as much. Didn't get some of the many things. You know, he was Tony Romo before Tony Romo. The way that Ed Podolak could describe the action, explain it in detail, see what was going to be happening before the play even developed. It was uncanny, and he was incredible at it for a very long time. It's not something that is easy to pick up. It's not easy, but when you have a guy that played middle linebacker that can diagnose those things, see those things on the playing field, that's going to be incredibly important, and also do it in an entertaining way. And that's really, more than anything, what you're looking for, to do it entertainingly, right? You have to have that entertainment value. And I think he's going to do a tremendous job. Reading Chad Leistiko's article in the Des Moines Register, talking about the hire. One thing in the interview with both Gary Dolphin and with Pat Angerer that was said is there's already the connection there. And some of my most memorable moments from post-game press conferences and the post-game shows were from Pat Angerer. I mean, those are the ones that will still live on. Goes down. He was a player of the game. I want to say it was maybe one of the wins against Penn State. Hey, how's it going down there in the locker room? Pretty good, Angerer said. Just a bunch of naked dudes running around, right? Fun, goofy. That's what you're going to get. Question about thumbs and talking about his dog. I mean, he's a goofball. He's also smart. And he plays kind of that dumb jock role. That's what you get. For years, he did a podcast with Tom Kakert from Hawkeye Report. And that's one thing that you got from him. Yeah, there was some of the sophomore humor. There was some of the goofiness and those kind of things. But there's also a wit to him. And it's not just funny for funny's sake. There's a lot more there. There is depth and breadth to him, and certainly his football knowledge. And I think that's going to come through. I think this is a great hire. I think this is something that makes a whole lot of sense. A guy that's been involved in the community, what he does for his full-time job, coupled with what he does just as a person. His former teammate, Brett Greenwood, and obviously what Brett has gone through now over the last decade plus in battling after he went down in a workout. You see what he does, and you see what it means. It means for him to be a Hawkeye and to be a part of this. I think it's going to be great. Are there going to be some growing pains? Perhaps, but it's going to learn on the job. Dude's 37, and this is a job you can do for a very long time. And if we get the same kind of run that we got out of Ed Podolak, I think it's going to be a good thing. I think we're going to be really entertained. Coming up a little bit later on, Scott Dochterman from The Athletic is going to join us and going to talk to Doc a little bit about not just obviously Pat Angerer and what he's going to be in this job and his thoughts on him getting the role, but also who's next. Gary Dolphin now in his 70s. It's not going to last forever. And I believe he has 3 years left on his current deal with Learfield. Who's going to be that next voice of the Iowa Hawkeyes and the play-by-play voice that goes along with it? We'll talk about that a little bit coming up here with Scott Dochterman. We got some basketball talk. Caitlin Clark, another tough loss tonight as they fall on Monday night at the hands again of the Connecticut Sun. A weird game, not out there much in the second half of the game, low minute totals, and coming off a win on Friday night, they just didn't have it. Yeah, the discourses we talked about yesterday that's happening in the Olympic field, her not being selected for the Olympic team. It gets ugly. It gets bad. It gets frustrating. I think us as Hawkeye fans, and I'm going to guess most everybody that listens to the show here, it is Locked On Hawkeyes, by the way. I'm going to guess that most of us, at times, I've gotten sick of the conversation because it's gone in so many different levels. And then politics is being brought into it. You have the racial component. There is a lot happening here. For a lot of us, myself included, I just want to watch her ball. It's fun talking about what she does between the lines. And yeah, there are a little bit of extras that come along with Caitlin Clark. But boy, some of the other things that come out of it, it's frustrating. It really is a lot. Caitlin Clark, though, she's the one that has to shoulder basically all of that. And she, again, does just an incredible job of that. She's amazing. She really is. And glad that she is a Hawkeye. With that, we continue here, Locked On Hawkeyes. We got a ton to get into with Scott Dochterman. We're going to talk about Caitlin Clark. We're going to talk about Pat Angerer. We got a few other things as well. A big football recruiting weekend. We talked about Jose Epinesa and him making his visit, what that's going to look like, the legacy recruits with him, and another DeJean with Jax DeJean getting a scholarship offer before he even starts his sophomore year of high school. We got all that coming up with Scott Dochterman, one of the lead beat writers here on the Iowa Beat. He'll join us as we continue. Stay right there. This is Locked On Hawkeyes. Today's episode of the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast is brought to you by LinkedIn. Well, small business owners, we've talked about it before. And if you're looking to hire for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you need to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. It's tough finding those right candidates as a small business owner. I know the plight that you're going through when you're looking for it. And LinkedIn isn't just a job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job, but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking on the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is constantly finding ways to make the process easier. I love this part of LinkedIn. their new feature helping you write job descriptions, making the process for you even easier and quicker. 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for their hiring. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Once again, that's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply.
Dochterman from The Athletic joins us. The Pat Angerer news broke earlier this morning. If you missed it, Pat Angerer has been named the replacement for Ed Podolak. It'll be Angerer and Dolphin going forward, and Scott Dochterman joins us. Talk Hawks and Big Ten. Hello, Scott, Trent, and Ken. How are you, sir?
I am well, guys. Beautiful day outside. How about you?
Yeah, doing fine, thanks. And you're right, can't beat it. It's about to get a little warm, as Trent just mentioned during one of the updates. Anyways, Pat Angerer is in. Your thoughts on the Angerer hiring? Obviously, a great Hawk, had a nice NFL career. I've said it numerous times, the most dominant game I've ever seen in a state championship when he led Bettendorf to the state title over Southeast Polk with one arm. Just remarkable player. Your thoughts on Pat Angerer?
I think it's tremendous when you look at what Pat is, and that is he's every man. I mean, he's the guy that really everybody can relate to. He's fun. He's entertaining. He's energetic. I kind of describe him as funny, self-deprecating, and insightful. And he can also be serious and introspective. So I think when you combine all of those, it makes Pat the ideal candidate to replace somebody like Ed Podolak. We had a lot of those same types of qualities, and in this state, in that position, to have someone who could go out among the masses and mingle and feel like one of the guys, doesn't matter which kind of clique you're in or group you're in, I think it says a lot. And, the only fear I have is I'm sure Pat will be fine, but, you just worry about him uttering an expletive once in a while. But other than that, he's a really good choice.
That's what the dumb button's for. And hopefully a quick trigger down there in Learfield from the studios, and they'll have everything good to go there. It's when we talk about it, though, a look towards the future. Do you have any names in mind when Dolph eventually retires, when we hear Gary Dolphin call the Hawkeye game for the final time? Is there a name or two that bounce into your head when we think towards the future of that?
You, Trent, might be number one.
Well, thank you. I'm a long shot.
You're a long shot, but you might get in. There's some usual suspects, of course. I mean, somebody like Zach Mackey is somebody that's going to get a lot of looks.
He's good.
I mean, golden baritone voice. He's an Iowa grad. He did Iowa baseball. He's done some BTN now. He's the voice of Virginia Tech. He's still young. He's probably in his mid-20s. Yeah. So he'd probably be at the top of my list, but I wouldn't rule out somebody that maybe we don't know about. Maybe somebody, because Dolph was really out there and everybody was like, who's Dolph? And when he got hired in 97. Maybe you never know. There might be somebody who's a pretty good radio broadcaster at a corner of the state that, just hasn't really left that would fit right in. So, but, I would probably say Zach Mackey. I know people have talked about Mike Grimm before, but he's been up in the Twin Cities for so long now, it's just not feasible.
Yeah. Doc, obviously the news that reverberated all weekend and continues to reverberate now that talk shows are back on, not just in Des Moines, across the country, because it is such a big topic, is the Caitlin Clark being left off the Olympic team. Your thoughts, Doc, on her being not named part of the 12 that will head to Paris?
It's been the talk about story in the nation, since this happened. And I think what you look at is what's the reason? Is she not one of the best 12? I think people could kind of buy that because she's still a rookie. And this is, it is kind of a team that you got to earn your way onto. I mean, you're representing the United States of America. However, it just seems to be ambiguous enough that you don't know if there's like this anti-Caitlin Clark bias. And I think some of the old tweets that have come out from Cheryl Reeve from Minnesota Lynx that, was like the W, hashtag the W is more than one player. You start to wonder, what is it that you guys want here? I mean, you have an opportunity. You've wanted to grow this product forever. And now you get the opportunity to do it. And what do? you sabotage it in every single way, shape, and form, to where people are going to get turned off by this. I mean, she comes off this tremendous game the other day, the best WNBA game she's played by far, and she looked more like the Caitlin Clark at Iowa than she has any time in the WNBA. And then this news comes out, and then it's just become this, just divisive issue. And knowing Caitlin fairly well, at least covering her, she doesn't deserve any of this. She's never handled herself in any way, shape, or form in derogatory fashion. And all she's done is brought joy to millions of people and try to make a positive impact on this game. And she's only 22, and yet she's become like this symbol for everybody to latch onto, and it just looks exhausting. So I don't think it's a bad thing that she's going to get a couple of weeks to do nothing. I think that's a good thing. But I also think that for her to be the lightning rod of such intense criticism is really unfair, and I hate seeing it.
Is it time, and I know the Olympics are separate from the WNBA, but we're talking about women's basketball as a whole and trying to build up what the WNBA is. Is it time for them to go out and get a real commissioner? I mean, the commissioner background of Engelbert is she was the CEO of a business company. I mean, this is not sports. Can you grow the game? And is there potentially somebody in a commissioner role that can step in and fix some of the wrongs that we continue to see week after week in this league?
There needs to be some sort of bigger voice. I mean, frankly, when you start to look at the best commissioners, even their lightning rods, who aren't necessarily great commissioners, you know their names, because they come out and they talk and they say things, and they're visible. I mean, a Roger Goodell, we can argue night and day, over what he does right and wrong, but he's visible. Everybody knows who he is. Adam Silver's been tremendous. Rob Manfred, probably not as much, but people know who they are because they talk, and, right or wrong. What's going on at this level? I mean, we've all seen it. You should capitalize on Caitlin Clark's interest. Look at what people in this state, in my household, my relatives, friends, everybody, they've all got the WNBA app, and they're watching not only Caitlin Clark, but watching Kate Martin get her first start.
Yep.
And then commenting on people like Asia Wilson, and Kelsey Plum has become a fan favorite for people here. And that's exactly what you want. And instead, let's just continue to fight and turn people against one another to the point where you get to the 4th of July weekend and people are just a little bit angry, and then they leave it in the dust. They go on vacation, and then there's the Olympics. By the time they get back, it's going to be football season. Yep. We're all just going to be throwing up our hands and saying, you know what, who cares?
Yep.
We're just going to go forward. And they run into that risk. And in 5 years, if Iowa has, let's say, Addie Deal comes out and she's the next great one here, and in 4+ years, 5 years, she comes out to the WNBA, people are going to be like, I don't know. I remember the last time when Caitlin was there. That's what they run that risk. And then Iowa fans somehow are taking the blame for this, which is just unbelievable. I can't get it. I mean, everybody is attacking Caitlin, and then they're defending her, and now they're the bad guys. I'm sick and tired of it.
I'm with you. Do you think that women's college basketball across the board, not just in our state, will see an uptake in attendance this year?
No, I think it'll see a pretty leveling off. I think, there has been a lot more interest, but, the Caitlin phenomenon won't happen again. I mean, they could promote Paige Beckers or Juju Watkins all they want, and they're going to be great players, no question. And people are going to want to come out to see them. But are they going to be able to sell out every single arena across the board? I don't see that happening. Now, if they can get 80 to 90% of those that came, that's a win. And you'll just continue to make the product better. But it's going to take a little bit of a dip. It just has to. I mean, Caitlin Clark is a special player and a special person that is just, you just don't get every year.
I think Doc said at the beginning, I think she's the most impactful woman to ever dribble a basketball.
You can make the case that she's the most impactful female athlete who's ever competed.
Yeah.
Because of what she's done. I mean, you look at, the attendance above the.
I didn't say the best, by the way, for those folks who are listening with 1 ear, right? The most impactful.
Mm-hmm, exactly. There's a difference. I'm not going to. Asia Wilson to me just floors me with how good she is. Yeah. And there are other players who are better than Caitlin is today. next year, that might not be the case. Maybe at the end of this year, it won't be the case. But the most impactful, sure. I mean, kind of like Tiger Woods was in the late 90s. He wasn't the best golfer of all time at that point, but he was the most impactful because everybody watched him and everybody wanted to know, how is Tiger doing? And then when you got to Sunday and he was in the contention, the ratings just went through the roof. And Caitlin, every time she's on there, I mean, you look at the ratings right now, it's amazing. When she plays, when she's on the road, there's sellouts, there's records, there's 20,000 people at the games. You can't deny that. People are trying to deny that. And but they're just, because they just don't want to embrace her. And the more you do this, and how has she conducted herself?
Perfectly. Like a pro.
Yep.
She's the best person. She's always been that way. I mean, the amount of pressure she had in college was off the charts. And yet she's always handled herself that way. I'm floored by all this discourse. I'm saddened by it, frankly. I was hoping just to see a little bit more of a celebration. And if things don't change, they're just going to slaughter this golden goose laying golden eggs.
She is.
And they're all going to have to climb into airplanes with me and you and everybody else.
Yep.
Doc, wrap it up with a little football, your main beat there over at The Athletic. A couple of potential legacies. Yosei Epinesa took his official visit to Iowa this week. He's, of course, a class of 2025. And then an offer out to another DeJean. This is Jax DeJean, who just completed his freshman year of high school already with an Iowa offer. Your thoughts on those two legacies? But certainly with Epinesa, there are a lot of suitors for him.
Yeah, and it's different. I wrote about this a little bit the other day when I broke down the visitors. And with Yosei, he's going to take all of his visits. And they're really close to a lot of, different programs. And that's completely different than AJ, who walked in basically 2 weeks after the Rose Bowl in early 2016 and committed and never wavered. But I think the tightness of that family and where they're from and how many times they've been here, and the fact that AJ came in, he left workouts in Buffalo and flew into Iowa City to be here to help. I mean, Iowa is getting a fair opportunity, and Yosei and the Epinesa family is not going to be one of those that kind of wavers, or maybe flips or anything like that. They're going to go through this process, and if he picks Iowa, he's got a chance to be just as good as AJ. I remember seeing him. I went down and visited AJ when he was in high school at Edwardsville, Illinois, and Yosei was bigger than everybody else in his class, but he was like third or fourth grade at the time. I mean, just and now to see him just look the way he does, it just floors me. But I think there's been a lot of changes with the Iowa program in that period of time too, and I think it'd be a really fun chance for him to really grow here. And then if Jax DeJean is like Cooper, I think Iowa would love to have that person in their mix for maybe 4 years this time, and maybe use him on offense first instead of defense.
Danny Hurley, by the way, staying with UConn, just announced. Interesting news there. Doc, what have you got coming up this week at The Athletic?
Yeah, today I just broke down all the true freshmen that are coming into Iowa. I've got something about walk-on, Big Ten wide that I'm working on, and then a couple other things that still need to be finalized. But, it's going to be a busy week and basically football related. I'm staying away from writing about Caitlin Clark. I'm leaving that to our wonderful women's basketball team and national team.
Good stuff. Doc, we'll talk to you in a couple of weeks. Thank you, Scott Dochterman. Appreciate you coming on.
All right. Thank you. Have a good day.
Today's episode of the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast is brought to you by FanDuel and the FanDuel Sportsbook. As we make our way through the finals, we got baseball. Summer is here. NBA Finals, Stanley Cup, and a whole lot more. You can bet on all of it with FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. You heard that right, new customers, $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 you can use on everything. You can bet on the finals MVP, who's going to win the Conn Smythe, who's going to hit one out of the park, or looking forward to football season. They have you covered there with a ton already up on college football, individual games, conference odds, and a whole lot more, all up on the FanDuel Sportsbook app. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and add a big win to your summer bucket list. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Trent Condon back with you one final time here on the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. Thanks for making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. Wrapping things up here with a little basketball news on the men's basketball side of things. New players are on campus. We talked about that on yesterday's show, and everydayers heard us talking a little bit about the football front. Basketball front, same thing here with the incoming freshmen. So you have the incoming freshmen, two of them are making their way in, at least scholarship freshmen. You have Cooper Koch, who will be wearing number 8. How about that? Number 8. Okay, a little bit different than Dad's number in the 40s back in the day. You also have Chris Taggio coming in. He'll be wearing number 34. A couple of forwards that are built differently, play differently. Koch, your outside shooter, a tremendous shooter from the outside, one of the best in the class of 2024. And then Taggio, just a freak athlete, a plus defender, good rebounder. Those are things that are certainly welcome in the ears, I think, of a lot of Hawkeye fans out there. Seydou Traore also coming in, the Manhattan transfer. He's going to wear number 7. Yeah, look at these odd numbers we're getting there. Number 7 for him, and then Drew Thelwell from Morehead State, the point guard. And I don't want to say likely starting point guard, but I think maybe a slight tick up from Brock Harding. That aside, he'll be wearing number 3 coming up this season. A couple other notes, including one from our buddy Tom Caker from HawkeyeReport.com, part of On3 Media. He said on his Hawkeye message board last night that there appears to be a non-conference game that's going to be played in the Quad Cities, and this is not a tomato can. What was it? Last year, Florida A&M was the opponent here in Des Moines. Not the case here. It is going to be a big matchup against Washington State, a team that made the round of 32 a year ago. Now, a completely different roster. They're completely changing things. Obviously, the Pac-12, as we know it, is no more. It's down to the Pac-2. Washington State, probably not going to be a great team this season, but very interesting. Playing Utah State down in Kansas City. I have a game up in Sioux Falls. And then this one, interesting, the way that Iowa scheduling is going about it. And look, if fans aren't going to come to Carver Hawkeye Arena, not just during the non-conference portion of the schedule, but during the conference portion of the schedule, and we've seen those numbers, it's hard to poke holes in this. You give an opportunity for people in other areas of the state, or in the case of Sioux Falls, for those people up in western Iowa, northwest Iowa, the opportunity to see the team and not have to make the long drive to Iowa City to make that happen. People aren't showing up. I would love to poke holes in it. If you're a season ticket holder and you're frustrated by this, I can understand it. It's not about you. It's about the rest of us that aren't season ticket holders, that aren't going to these games, and that's where the issue lies. We got you covered, your team every day here on the Locked On Network, and thanks for making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. So much going on in the world of Hawkeye athletics. Mentioned the freshmen on campus, and we're going to start to break them down a little bit deeper. Also coming up later this week, we'll talk to our man Brian Smith on the recruiting front as we take a look forward to the class of 2025 and his thoughts on Yosei Epinesa. Hey, are you still watching Fox Sports, ESPN all day on your TV? Do you have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Well, it's time to make the switch to Locked On Sports Today. It's a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day. It'll bring you the biggest stories without all that screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We got you covered on the Hawkeye front. A whole lot more coming your way throughout the course of the week. Thanks for making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. We'll talk to you again tomorrow. Go Hawks.